I struggle with, having 4 spiritual laws or something that I'm supposed to be saying when I think that maybe the best witness is not having to say anything unless the Lord prompts you. Mm-hmm. And I think you need to pray.
Yeah.
Before you have any conversation, and you'd probably agree with that.
Right.
That Lord, am I supposed to say something to this person? And what would I say? He will give you the words.
Well, friends, here we are for this week's episode of The Boundless Show. This is Lisa Anderson here with you. And here we are for our roundtable, and we are going to have a conversation with this crew about evangelism when you work with believers, which currently is the experience of all of us at this table. And it can be a challenge because I think this is I bring this up often when you feel that you don't even have to work for a ministry or a nonprofit. This is like if you are doing all the churchy things, if you live at home with your Christian family, if you hang out only with your Christian friends, if you are in 4 Bible studies, which you shouldn't be, all of those things we need to talk about how to do this because, again, we are called to be salt and light and to care about those who are lost. So I'm welcoming to the table Hope, Dan, and Dave. Good to have you guys.
Thank you.
It's great to be here.
Woo, woo. Okay, awesome. Well, let's start out by just talking about the general lay of the land as far as how Christian is your life. We're going to give away awards for who can be the most living in that Christian ghetto. And Hope, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, I'll try not to virtue signal too much.
Okay, good. Gen Z.
Yeah.
Gen Z awareness.
Well, I grew up going to public school around a lot of unbelieving friends, and then I always thought that my witness would be with unbelieving coworkers. And then I went to college to this private Christian school, and I didn't want to go there at first, so I was kicking and screaming, but it was great. And it was some friends I knew, I was like, okay, great, I can fellowship with these people. It's really easy. And then other friends, I was like, I don't really know where you stand. I might need to ask a little more questions. And it was a little more witnessy. Mm-hmm. But I kept in contact with some high school friends from public school. And even working here with all believers, that's been something that I keep in mind of how to be salt and light, especially when I talk about where I'm working and I talk about my internship and the kind of ministry focus that we have. And then I have some siblings who don't profess Christ. So that's also my witness there and what I think about when I think about being salt and light. But I did realize as I was in these Christian spaces and even at church and finding a great community there, this is really easy. I don't have to defend myself. A lot of just what am I doing? Why do you think that? And, why do you do certain things or not do certain things? And then I was like, I think I need to think about my witness a little more because
that's great.
Yeah.
Good thoughts. Dan, how about you?
I grew up in a Christian home and went to a Christian college and have most of my career been in Christian ministry. So I can relate what you're saying, Hope. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until recently that I got involved in a community theater here in town. And it's a different world.
Yeah, sure.
The people there are, at best, apathetic and at worst hostile to Christians. And it's a really, it was mind-blowing for me in a way because I'd been so familiar and comfortable in the other that to have people who just, they don't even understand.
Right.
You talk about, the Bible talks about blindness and just kind of living in darkness, and that's where a lot of these folks live.
So how soon in do you lead with, I work for a Christian ministry, all you pagans? How does that conversation go?
Well, if you know, I've been very, very careful. I've started with things like, I will pray for you when they talk about difficult situations they're going through. I think, given that I work at a pretty conservative Christian organization, there's that added element of, let's just say that this is a non-Trump community theater, very unhappy with the current political climate. And so I just have to find my place in the sense of, can I be a good friend? Can I be a caring person who will bring up spiritual matters when it is appropriate?
Yeah, that's interesting. Because even, I can say even what you're saying about the political landscape, my goodness, you could be on either side of the aisle and there's going to be something that's going to polarize someone. So whether it's Trump or whether it's another name politically or whatever, it's like, my goodness, you almost can't win. So good point with that. Dave, how about you?
Well, I'm a particular bad offender because I have two jobs, one here at Focus, and then my other job is a teaching pastor.
Oh, my goodness.
So, right.
What in the world? Okay.
Do you know any non-Christians?
Yes, exactly.
Exactly.
Yes.
No, he's gotten them all saved. So that's
right, 100%.
Yeah,
100%. So I have to be very, very intentional in knowing that most of my evangelism is going to come to strangers. And so there is a particular approach, that I have coming and to try to recognize opportunities. And I say that very intentionally because I'm not always trying to force opportunities. I will try to sort of test the waters sometimes, but I'm also really trying more to respond with openings. And but it is almost always going to be with strangers. Some of it's very intentional because I try to do a lot of it on social media as well. So.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so what does it look like for you to, Dan started alluding to this, but to seed conversations with people, whether they're like Hope in your own family or friends that you have a pretty solid relationship with, maybe from school. I think either way, it's always awkward because that there might be disagreement. And I do want to say, generally, I've said this before on the show, that we have to remind ourselves that, first of all, it's not our job to be, quote, getting people saved. The Holy Spirit is fully capable of doing that and pursuing people and all that, but we do have a role to play. So what does that feel like for you? Are there certain relationships or environments that are trickier for you? Or how do you even seed those kinds of conversations?
So for me, I travel a lot. So I typically on a plane, you're going to sit next to someone, or in the gate, you're going to sit next to someone. And if they start talking with me, I will often take that as a signal to try to move the conversation to spiritual things. So if I start to talk with them, then I'll try to steer the conversation in a place that once you just maybe talk about some of the things you have in common or some of the things you like. If I hear anything typically emotional when it comes to people, if they're sharing something, even if there's like, I was just in Colorado and I just was absolutely blown away by the beauty of nature and it really just expanded my soul, or something like that, which would be a weird thing for someone to say. But it's, but if they say something emotional, I'm also going to take that as a opportunity then to try to bring the conversation to spiritual things. So if they talk to me first, and if then in our conversation, if it hits something emotional, then that's often where I'll feel, where I'll start praying hard, at least to try to get it to a place of spiritual things.
Well, that's great. And even you saying, the opportunity that you have intentionally to think about your travel schedule and say, this is another opportunity to connect. That's a great season that you're in that respect. So, Dan, how about you?
This is an area where I struggle to just naturally bring it up. I remember going to a movie at college, and it was not a particularly Christian film, not a bad film, but yet this guy was walking through the parking lot with a cross on wheels over his shoulder, and, people are like laughing and joking, and I'm thinking I didn't want to be even near him by association. Planting seeds is important, and I think it looks a lot of different ways. Living out your life in a way that people can see that maybe you're not the same. You don't talk the same. You don't have the same attitudes. You don't. The things you like are different. And for me, that's been my witness in a way, especially with this community theater I've mentioned, simply because it's almost black and white in some ways. And I struggle with, having 4 spiritual laws or something that I'm supposed to be saying when I think that maybe the best witness is not having to say anything unless the Lord prompts you. And I think you need to pray, before you have any conversation. You'd probably agree with that.
Right.
That Lord, am I supposed to say something to this person? And what would I say? he will give you the words.
Yeah. Well, and it's such a good reminder too that as we are in the Word, I mean, you just start knowing more and more, and as you're living it out, like, oh my goodness, this is an interaction that I see in one of the Gospels with Jesus that I could bring to bear on this conversation. Or it doesn't necessarily have to be like whipping out your plan of like, here's the deal. But I think that's great. Hope, I think it's particularly interesting being a Gen Zer, where I think in your generation, there's not as much of I feel like older generations had the quote unquote luxury of everyone kind of believed similar things on certain scopes of like, you could talk to almost anyone and say, yeah, I believe there's a God, or I believe that Jesus was a good person or whatever. But I feel like Gen Z, it's very much, if you're a believer, you are drawing a line in the sand where you're gonna fight someone probably on this because of something that they're gonna bring up and probably have a decently cogent argument. So how has this looked for you as you've had conversations?
Yeah. With some of my high school friends, it's just been maintaining that relationship of Jesus's love and of just loving them well, and being a good friend, actually caring about their problems and not just like, you know what, Jesus could fix that. Yeah, he probably could, but it would still look like, still walking through pain and suffering, as long as we're on earth. And I'm just thinking about times where I worked at an optometry with people who weren't believers, and a lot of them, they shared their views openly, their non-Christian views, and I mean non-Christian as in like anti-Christian views, and that I wasn't really willing to fight them because I was like, there are patients here. Like, sure. I just needed to, get work done. But it was a lot of prayer, definitely, every time before I went into the office. I was just like, Lord, open my eyes to show me how I can be a good witness and what that's gonna look like, because I didn't really have all the answers. And I'm not the best cold contact evangelist of like, just walking around the mall, hey, Jesus, I'm really sorry, I can't do that well. Yeah. But with my coworkers there, it was just finding things that they were excited to talk about. So then they talked about boys a lot and like dating, and I personally don't really like talking about that a lot, but when I started dating, when the Lord decided to humble me, I was like, okay, this might be a way for me to start talking about, some of my Christian values without being like all like, I'm better than you. So it was actually something where I told them I started dating this guy, and I don't remember if I mentioned it before, but they were like, did you kiss him? I was like, no. And they were like, what? Why? Like, this is your chance. You should have just like, taken him by the head and like whatever. I was like, actually, no, I didn't do it. But they were so confused. And I didn't really have to explain myself because it was a lot more like girling, of just like, yeah, and it's so cute, whatever. And then I was like, just praying like, Lord, I pray that would confuse them. And not in a way where I'm like, I want them to be like, stumbling off and don't know where they're going, but just something for them to think about of like, why would you think about that? And why would you think about like not doing certain activities with him, or just like even cohabitation and things like that of why is that not in my plan? Why is my plan for like dating, marriage so much like, longer, shorter, different, and different boundaries, things like that. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I was thinking my own scenario. I feel like I'm in a season now where I have a lot of people in my life who are deconstructing or are, maybe they grew up in Christian homes. So it's not a matter of head knowledge, or they'll be able to tell you all the things. They grew up in church or whatever, but they've either just straight up walked away or have all these arguments against it, or a lot of hurt, like Dave was alluding to, of just, well, I can't, if Jesus is going to be like this, or if the church is going to be like this, then forget it. So that's been kind of a new area for me of really having to go after, okay, we're not just talking about what does Romans say at this point. We're talking about why is this so problematic in your head? Like where are you stopped up with this? So that's pretty interesting. So what, to that point, I mean, talking about maybe when a conversation gets deeper, what, Dave, maybe you can start us off here. What does it look like for you to actually maybe have some answers for people as they're questioning things without, I mean, I think all of us wish we could be a super duper theologian or that we had all the answers, or that I find myself getting derailed because people will be like, yeah, but what about Noah? Or what about abortion? And they're trying to like sideline me with all these other things that I'm like, I can't talk about every, unique cultural issue out there necessarily. So how do you keep the main thing the main thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, I'm a little bit unique because I have spent a lot of time on TikTok answering people's questions. So for about a year, 3 times a week, I'd go live on TikTok to answer people's questions. So there's usually a question for me that I have gotten a chance to answer a lot. But before that, typically, even if I knew the answer, I would try to not first be like, do they just look for the answer, and how can I get this back to Jesus? So typically when I have shared the gospel with a lot of people, it is a little bit awkward. Like, how do you get into it? And my question always is, hey, tell me who Jesus is to you. And that way I can hear from them just about Jesus and what it is they know about Jesus, and we can sort of go from there. But typically, I don't run into a lot of people personally who, again, because I'm talking to a lot of strangers, right, that are first leading with their objections. They're really more, in a sense, and partially too, I have a 30-second spiel about my testimony too. So I'll just say my 30-second testimony real quick. And when I finish my 30-second testimony, I just ask, just curious, who's Jesus to you? That's usually how I transition a conversation. But if they do have major objections about the Bible, about the goodness of God and suffering and evil, or the hypocrisy of the church, all those things, I will try to address them. But you should never be intimidated if you don't know the answer. All you have to say is, wow, that's actually a really important question. I don't know the answer, but I certainly can find it for you. So maybe we can exchange phone numbers or emails or something. Yeah. And I think that's you should never be intimidated by having to say, I don't know.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Either of you?
Yeah.
I was just going to say a heartbreaking thing for me is that my grown daughters, who I've been working in ministry my entire adult life, and so they've grown up with that, but they both have walked away from their faith, and they know everything I could tell them already,
right?
As you said, and so I have to pray a lot and be a good dad and love them well, and hope by God's grace that my witness will somehow draw them back. But it's hard. It's heartbreaking. It's hard to even talk about, with other Christians, because, I feel ashamed, like I failed somehow.
Yeah.
And, but that's the cards I have. And so I do what I can to be a good dad.
That's great.
Yeah, I was going to say I have had some conversations with friends who aren't Christians, and just seeing how the times that I can answer their questions well and give that apologetic, I'm just eternally grateful to the Lord for giving me certain experiences in books that I've read, talking about abortion and our purpose and kind of, are we made to do whatever we want? Just that has been cool to see, but also with that experience, I've been able to see how that's not enough. Like, having the answers to all of your existential questions isn't going to be like, okay, I get it now. Jesus did die and he was real, and
it's not just an intellectual decision.
Yeah, but I have seen how that intellectual conversation gets the gears turning, and that has been really cool, but yeah, it's also there's something more to this. The Holy Spirit needs to get in there and just change your heart and open your eyes. And that is what I pray for, and that is what I fast for. I think a lot of my witness has been just me and God, of just pleading with the Lord, hey, I really want this person to be saved, and I love this person, and I want you to show yourself to them, and taking advantage of that opportunity we have with him to not just pray, but to, depend on him with our bodies that too.
Amen.
It really seems like a three-legged stool in that there's the element of knowing the reason and being able to share the reason for the hope that you have, being able to, as Dan said, love people, pray for people. I mean, people are messed up, and a lot of them are willing to say, I'm going through a really hard time. I'm going through a divorce. I'm having a challenge with this relationship, or, my boyfriend just broke up with me, or whatever. So people live a little bit in that. And then also knowing your own story and being willing to share your own story and what God is doing in your life, which I think is so helpful. It reminds me of a post we published with one of our bloggers, Lily, and she called it the power of your boring testimony. And the whole idea is around what has God done, what is God doing in your life right now? It might just be answering some questions about that, like, why do I still remain a Christian? What does this mean to me? And I think that's important for us to think through. So you guys, such great thoughts. Thank you so much for weighing in on this topic. Awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks.